He was a man on the edge, broken, and barely hanging on. A single father drowning in debt, fighting to keep his little girl fed and his soul intact. Every sunrise felt heavier than the last, a broken bar, until the day he took a shortcut through the woods and found her. A woman in a tattered wedding dress, barefoot and chained to a tree. She looked like a ghost from another world. Mute. Terrified. Forgotten. Who was she? Why was she there? And what kind of cruel fate left her to rot beneath the trees? What began as a haunting mystery unraveled into a breathtaking story of healing, redemption, and love in the most unexpected form. He thought he was rescuing Hera, but it turns out she was sent to save him. This is the story of two broken souls who found everything they'd lost, a broken bar in each other. And it all started with a chain, a tree, and a choice that would change their lives forever. She didn't speak at first. Her eyes, wide with terror and disorientation, darted around like a frightened animal cornered in the dark. The shackles around her wrists clinked softly with every subtle movement she made, their presence too surreal, too cruel, for him to comprehend right away. The delicate lace of her once beautiful dress was torn, stained with dirt and dried tears, a ghostly contrast to the vibrant white it must have once been. She looked like something out of a forgotten dream, a haunting portrait of heartbreak and confusion. His first instinct was to call for help, to run and alert the authorities. But something deep inside his chest, something old and aching, made him pause. There was something familiar in the raw panic on her face, something that mirrored his own weariness. He knelt before her slowly, carefully, as though approaching a wounded bird, speaking softly despite not knowing whether she could understand him. Her reaction was slight, barely perceptibly, but it was there. A small flicker of acknowledgement behind her glassy stare. He tried again, this time offering the jacket off his back, holding it out like a peace offering. She didn't take it, but she didn't flinch either. The chain, a rusty, cruel, bolted into the base of a tree, wasn't something he could easily break. It felt almost symbolic, this woman tied to something immovable, something rooted in pain and silence. He made a decision in that moment, one not born of logic, but of instinct. He couldn't leave her there. He wouldn't. Hours later, after struggling with a hacksaw he found in his garage, and checking on her between each trip back to the site, he finally set her free. She didn't run. She didn't speak. She simply stood up, barefoot and shaking, and followed him. The house he brought her to was small, barely enough for himself and his son, but it had warmth. It had a roof that didn't leak and walls filled with quiet memories. His little boy, curious and cautious, peered out from behind the arm of the couch, asking who the princess was. The woman didn't smile. Not yet. But she blinked slowly, as if trying to remember what kindness looked like. She didn't eat much the first few days. He gave her space, left trays of food at the edge of the table, kept his distance but remained close enough to be a constant. She slept curled on the couch like a cat, expecting to be kicked at any moment. She barely spoke above a whisper, and even then, it was fragmented. But something changed the day his son climbed into her lap uninvited and offered her one of his toy dinosaurs. She looked down at the plastic creature, puzzled, then up at the child with something barely concealed behind her quiet eyes. It wasn't quite joy. It wasn't recognition. But it was life. He watched her, watched the way her fingers trembled as she held a toy, as though it might crumble under her touch. And then, finally, she whispered her name. It was a simple sound, soft as the wind, but it echoed through the room like a bell. It made his son grin. It made him inhale sharply. She had a name. She had a voice. From there, the days began to take on color. She wasn't quite present, not entirely, but she began to join them at the table. She walked barefoot through the kitchen, pausing to feel the sun through the window on her face. She found comfort in small things, of folding towels, brushing the boy's hair, humming to herself when she thought no one could hear. Still, she flinched at loud noises. She startled at doors. And sometimes, he caught her staring off into space as though trapped behind invisible glass. Whatever world she had come from had left its marks, or ones he couldn't see, but felt in the way she recoiled from raised voices or sudden movements. He never asked her for explanations. He never tried to dissect her silence or push for details. It wasn't that he didn't care. It was that he understood what it meant to be haunted. In return, she never questioned why he looked at bills with a frown or stayed up late working 2 jobs just to make sure the heat stayed on. She never asked about the photo in the hallway of the woman who used to wear the ring he still kept in his drawer. Their conversations were few, but their understanding was vast. There was a language in shared glances, in the way she refilled his coffee without asking, in how he placed her favorite blanket on the couch before she curled into it each night. One morning, while the boy played with his crayons, she joined him without hesitation. She took a sheet of paper, stared at it a long moment, then began to draw. It wasn't perfect, her lines shaky and untrue, but when she turned it toward him, he saw a tree, a chain, a broken lock, and beneath it, a girl with a faint smile. He stared at it, something catching in his throat, and reached out not to touch her, but to place his hand gently beside hers. She didn't pull away. The days kept passing, quietly and gently. He would never forget how she arrived, nor would he ever fully understand what had happened before she came into his world. But what mattered was what they built afterward. She planted flowers in the backyard with his son. She read books aloud with a voice that was slowly regaining confidence. She laughed once, a sudden, startled sound that startled even her. And when she did, he found himself laughing, too, not because of the joke or the moment, but because it had been so long since joy had sounded so real. They were both still healing, still learning. But piece by piece, they began to assemble something whole from the wreckage of their pasts. And every time he looked at this woman who had once been a mystery bound by chains, he no longer saw a stranger.